Masamune Makabe was once an obese loser who was criticized by his crush for being a pig who spent all his time eating at every hour. However, everything changed when he traded his diabetes for dumbbells and transformed into the most attractive heartthrob at his school. The story begins when Masamune exits the shower and stares fixedly into the mirror as if he were the final boss in his own trap of attraction. His sister, Chinatsu Makabe, calls him narcissistic, but Masamune believes it is simply his self-confidence and his constant vigilance. He then scolds Chinatsu for eating junk food early in the morning and asks her not to enter his room without permission, which is something Chinatsu ignores with total confidence. Looking at his old photo, Masamune vows to maintain his physique and never return to being a walking cholesterol factory. At that same moment, his mother, Kinue Makabe, calls them for breakfast and prepares the table with donuts and fried chicken, but Chinatsu refuses to follow a high-calorie diet, which makes the mother think that she is hated. While he walks to school, he realizes that all the girls are enthusiastic about him and thinks that no one cares at all that they mocked him when he was a chubby boy. On the way, he stops to see some girls playing tennis, but he gets nervous when the girls come running out to complain. Luckily, they are complaining about another guy who also took some photos with his phone, but the guy claims he was only sending an email. Not wanting to get into trouble, Masamune decides to slip away from there, only to be recognized by a girl who tells her friend that he transferred here only a week ago. At that moment, other girls surround him and start praising him for having received a perfect score on the entrance exam, which makes him realize that he has officially become a supreme conqueror. After praising the girls for their hard work, Masamune leaves with a mocking smile, believing that his plan could work. Later, he encounters a group of students who have gathered to witness the marriage proposal of a suitor to someone they call the brutal princess. They believe the boy would be the one to win her over because he is handsome, but the princess appears on the roof and explains how she had her maid investigate the suitor's background. She reveals that he recently bought a gender-swapped version of a famous novel and wrote a function on the internet where the main character shares his name. She also reveals that he has a mole on his chest from which a single hair grows, and for that reason she calls him Mole Hair. The brutal princess then coldly walks away, leaving the man completely crushed. While Masamune approaches his class, he is afraid of the social rejection culture at the school, but his anxiety spikes when he stares into the eyes of Aki Adagaki herself, the brutal princess. During a break between classes, Masamune had fallen asleep but wakes up after remembering the trauma of rejection. The class representative, Futabatai, approaches him, happy to see that he is adapting well to the class. Just then, his best friend Kojuro Shuri enters the class with some food and offers it to Masamune. He accepts it with hesitation but realizes that he needs to work extremely hard in the gym to get rid of all those calories. Kojuro praises him for being good in both his studies and sports and mentions that there is another person who is good at everything except him. At that moment, the brutal princess enters the room and asks for the rejected suitor. When no one responds to her questions, she approaches Masamune and asks him personally, and Masamune is saved when the boy gives himself away. She takes out a love letter that the boy had written to her, saying that he liked how she looked in physical education class. Assuming that he has a desire for women in leggings, she calls him the prince who loves legs and tears up his love letter. After leaving, Kojuro reveals that she is like Beauty and the Beast, and that she hates men from her very core. To everyone who asked her out, they were given a humiliating nickname that pushed them away and established her as the brutal princess of this school. When Kojuro reveals that her real name is Aki, Masamune is surprised and runs toward the hallway where he once again looks her in the eye. But this time there is tension between the two. Masamune is excited to have met his old rival and plans to make her bite the dust. Later, Masamune observes Aki and quickly realizes that she has an entire squad of loyal followers who would jump off a cliff for her. Later, Kojuro explains that most girls criticize her for being cold and direct, but the person with whom she has the closest relationship is Yoshino Koiwai. Masamune asks him to explain everything he knows about Aki and learns that she likes to eat alone for some strange reason. Masamune believes this is something worth investigating, but Kojuro asks him to leave it alone if he does not want to become just another clown. Masamune believes he will be fine, but he loses track of Aki, which prompts him to search all over the school. When he fails to find her, the plot gods send Yoshino in his path so he can begin following her and see what she is doing. When he sees Yoshino enter the gym storage room, he decides to take a look inside to see what is happening. However, he gets scared of a spider and runs inside, but quickly apologizes, claiming that he only ran into her by chance. Aki severely asks him to leave her alone, but before leaving, Masamune realizes that Aki is holding a large lunchbox filled with dishes with many calories. He states that some girls in sports clubs also eat a lot, but then he notices some empty lunchboxes next to her. Just then, he hears Aki's stomach growl, and she explains that she is prone to hypoglycemia and must ensure she gets enough sugar. She is insecure about the noises her stomach produces all the time and begins to complain about how much things go wrong for her, but Masamune decides to leave without mocking her. Before leaving the room, Aki asks him that if he wants to live, he should not tell anyone. Masamune tries to get along with Aki, but she continues to push him away. However, Kojuro tells him that people believe Aki is softening toward him, and they could end up dating soon. After school, Aki tells Yoshino that she is about to faint from hunger and sends her to get something quick to eat. While Yoshino guides her, Aki worries about how much she has to eat to stay full of energy and decides to go after Yoshino because she cannot wait any longer. Just then, the rejected suitor appears and grabs her by the hair to get revenge on her for humiliating him. He assumes she is dating Masamune and takes out some scissors to cut her hair, but before he can do it, Masamune appears to the rescue. Noticing the blood coming from Masamune's hand, the aggressor cowers as if he owed money to someone while Aki asks if he is okay. Masamune, not wanting to appear weak, says he is fine, but internally he is struggling against the urge to project pain as if he had only stubbed his toe. Now that he has saved her and even knows her secret, this will allow him to get closer to Aki and execute his secret plan. When he was a young boy, he used to be a target for bullies because of his wealthy father. Aki seemed like an escape for him, but things took a turn for the worse when she rejected his fat body and called him pig's foot. After all these years, Masamune still hates her, but will do whatever it takes to make her fall in love with him. When he finally proposes to her, he will reveal his true identity and give her a rejection so strong that it could start its own trend on social media. The next day, when he enters the school, Futabatai notices the bandage on his hand, but Masamune tells her that he was just a bit clumsy. He soon encounters the aggressor, who apologizes for his behavior, and Masamune decides to let him go. Later, he joins Kojuro in the locker room, where he finds a letter inside his locker. Kojuro believes it is a love letter, but when he opens it, it says the words pig's foot, which makes him realize that his cover might have already been blown. Later in class, he looks at the girls to see who sent that letter and wonders if it is Aki. However, he realizes that Aki likes to put on a big show to humiliate others, which means she will not stoop to these petty tactics. While he is lost in his thoughts, Kojuro and Futaba bring him back to reality, but then he hears a student talking about a pig's foot that his mother packed for him for lunch, which almost gives him a heart attack. While the girls surround him to make sure he is okay, he realizes that none of them will touch him even with a 10-foot pole if they ever discover that he used to be huge in his childhood. Later in class, he imagines himself being bullied again by his classmates and sheds a tear, but the girls believe he is just a sensitive guy who was moved by the novel they are reading. After class, he reviews how he has spent the last 8 years training to lose all the excess weight, and everything will be wasted if Aki finds out his true identity. While he stresses about how to find the person who sent him Gyu letter, he notices a horde of boys running toward the cafeteria. Yoshino arrives right after and tries to sneak in to get something for Aki, only to be pushed outward. After taking a good look at his unexplored territory, Masamune goes to check it out and realizes that he would rather die before returning to that place full of testosterone. She hands a note to Masamune listing all the things Aki wants so the boy can go in to buy them for her. After taking his sweet time, he decides to leave, but Masamune says he will come with her since he already knows they are for Aki. Yoshino tries to flee, but he corners her to intimidate her, only to realize that she is very afraid of Aki. He promises to explain everything once they get there, assuring her that she will not be scolded at all. While they walk together, Masamune makes an analogy that Yoshino is like Cinderella, who has been mistreated by her evil stepmother. Later, Yoshino brings all the food to Aki, who scolds her for being lazy and useless. Once she bites the bread, she begins to cough and sends Aki to get her some water. Masamune takes this opportunity to enter the room and greet the brutal princess. She asks Masamune about his hand, and the boy shows indifference even though it hurts a lot. Aki hesitates and says she had no intention of involving him in her business, and Masamune laughs inside knowing that he has a psychological advantage over her. However, since they are talking like they normally do, this means that Aki is not the one who sent that letter. Aki then apologizes for everything, and before Masamune can say anything, Yoshino returns and falls flat on her face. Since her physical features are in view, Aki tries to make him stop looking, but accidentally pokes Masamune's eye. Then, Yoshino gives drinks to Aki and Masamune, and Aki explains that he is very humble and respectful toward others. However, it bothers Aki because she wants Yoshino only to be kind to her. Masamune reminds her that she has ketchup on her nose and encourages her before leaving her embarrassed and not knowing what to say. While Aki screams in frustration, Masamune gets excited and decides to read his sister's romance manga to further improve his game. On the other hand, although Aki is a bit frustrated, Yoshino can clearly see that she is also blushing. While Masamune walks home and thinks about how he can conquer Aki, he falls into a trap set by Yoshino. While he hangs from the tree, Yoshino calls him by his old nickname, Pig's Foot, and asks him if he is trying to get revenge on Aki. Masamune cannot understand how Yoshino knows his nickname, but then he remembers that she used to work at Aki's mansion. After lowering him, Yoshino explains that her family has served Aki's family for generations, which makes him realize that Aki is her mistress. He worries about being discovered by her, tries to play innocent, and realizes that his plan has failed, but when he confronts Yoshino, she tells him that she will help him get revenge, to his surprise. The next day, Masamune observes Aki from a distance talking about her role in the school beautification committee and wonders if he can trust Yoshino or not. In the end, he decides to keep his intentions to himself and work on getting Aki's phone number. At that moment, Futabatai appears with a stack stack of notes and asks him for help carrying them. While they walk toward the class, Masamune tries to ask for Futaba's contact to practice, but he stops mid-sentence after realizing that his phone is just a sophisticated calculator with 0 contacts. He runs away in embarrassment and asks Kojuro if he shares his email and also reveals his contacts. When Kojuro refuses, Masamune relaxes, realizing that no one can expose his non-existent social life. Just then, a member of the school beautification committee arrives and asks Futaba to replace a member, but she says she cannot because she has class representative duties. Hearing them, Masamune decides to take her place, because this will bring him even closer to Aki, which visibly excites Futaba. Later that day, he appears to help clean, expecting something neglected but gets frustrated when Aki makes it even worse. While he worries about the lack of progress in getting Aki's number, Futaba apologizes for bothering him, but he assures her that he is fine. After mentioning how Masamune is a sweet boy who helps others without saying much, she begins to blush and asks him if he would like to go to the movies with her. Masamune realizes that she is inviting him on a date and begins to hesitate. Then, Futaba catches the hint and apologizes for inviting him out so suddenly. She then leaves the classroom with a smile, and Masamune thinks that he is finally cool enough to be invited out. Just then, Aki appears for a new bucket and mocks him for his popularity. Controlling his emotion, Masamune says it does not matter if he receives a proposal from someone for whom he has no feelings. When Aki asks if he has someone specific he wants to date, he says her name with confidence, only for Aki to hit him with a thank you. He believes she accepted his proposal and asks for her contact, but Aki says her phone is currently being repaired and they will exchange numbers once it returns. The next time they are doing the cleaning, Masamune waits for Aki, but instead finds a letter that leads him on a treasure hunt around the school, eventually leading him back to the same room where he started. There, he looks down from the window and sees Aki holding a rejection sign, which frustrates him. Just then, Yoshino tells him he is too naive, and that if he leaves things to her, she can get Aki's address and have dates with her. She then takes Masamune's phone and adds her contact, to Masamune's great surprise. The next day, Futaba gives them the news that they will have to attend remedial classes for a month if they fail even one competency test. She believes it will be easy for Masamune since he has good grades, but the boy points to Kojuro, stating that it is a piece of cake for him. Despite his carefree attitude, Kojuro reveals that he only managed to get single-digit grades on the midterm exams and is running on good energy alone. This shocks Masamune because he thought he was doing everything right, and Futaba fears that Kojuro will surely fail and lose even more weight. However, that thought actually excites her, as Kojuro is quite small and she does not care about appearances. When Kojuro says he does not want to take extra classes, Masamune decides to help him study, which opens the door to Futaba's fantasies. Later, he takes Kojuro to study but realizes it might be too late for him. Then he sees Aki and Yoshino in exactly the same situation and discovers that his Cinderella is less smart than she seems. Before they start talking, Kojuro tells Aki that Masamune is preparing him for the test, but Aki believes it is a dumber version of the blind leading the blind. After a tug of war, Masamune challenges Aki to a showdown to see who gets the highest score between the two. If Masamune and Kojuro get a higher score, Aki has to go on a date with him, but if they lose, Aki can give him a nickname that he will use until he graduates. Aki says that is not enough and that he will also have to pay for her lunch for an indefinite amount of time, to which he agrees. While Aki and Yoshino leave, Kojuro feels bad about their chances, but Masamune knows that Yoshino is on his side, so it is a sure victory. That night, Yoshino advises Aki to study, explaining that Masamune obtained the perfect score on the entrance exam and is the first in the school's history to do so. Seeing Aki worried, Yoshino says she will support her no matter what, but hands her a romance novel in case she loses. That night, Masamune receives a call from Yoshino, but since it is his first time talking to a girl on the phone, he acts extremely nervous. He asks if she is willing to help, but Yoshino says this is too reckless and that he is on his own. The next day, Kojuro gets a 9 on the practice test and apologizes to Masamune, stating that he will ask Aki to give him a nickname too, so they can be losers together. Just then, Aki and Yoshino pass by, and Aki asks Masamune some questions to make sure he is still in the game. Masamune answers all the questions correctly, but knows he needs Kojuro to work even harder if they want to win. Then, he takes him to the study hall, where they study even more, and then return home to do intense cardio. At night, he meets Kojuro at a restaurant and helps him study, unaware that Aki and Yoshino are watching him from outside. The next day, Masamune asks Kojuro about the tests, and the boy says he actually has hope thanks to all the work they put into this test. Masamune is naturally happy, and Kojuro suggests they go eat something before the math exam. Masamune encounters Yoshino at the vending machine, who apologizes for not helping. However, he tells her not to worry because he and Kojuro are in top form today. Yoshino gives him a drink and wishes him good luck before running away awkwardly. Just before the math exam, Masamune begins to feel a pain in his stomach and realizes that Yoshino must have put laxatives in his drink to throw him off. He realizes that Yoshino was against him after all and is truly frustrated to see that they have resorted resorted to cheap methods to win this bet. After taking the exam, Masamune leaves the class angry and searches for Aki, only to discover that she left early due to a fever. Yoshino is there to confirm the news, and Masamune realizes they won without even fighting. He wonders why Yoshino gave him a bad drink, only to receive a message from his sister explaining that the eggs they had for breakfast had spoiled, which explains why his stomach was hurting. The next day, he learns that he failed the math exam because of that and has to take remedial classes. While he apologizes for being the only one who failed his class, he enters the classroom to learn that Aki is also taking remedial classes. Later that day, Yoshino calls him to let him know that Aki will have a date with him on Sunday, and they will meet at the station. While he heads there, he sees Aki from a distance dressed in a magical girl cosplay, which attracts a lot of attention. When a fan asks for a photo, Aki gets weird but is saved by Masamune. After leaving, Aki asks Masamune to hurry with their date, but he first wants to know why she is dressed that way. Aki mocks him for not knowing the dress code and establishes that wearing a costume is a must for breaking the ice on the first date, something she learned from the romance novel Yoshino gave her. Later, Masamune secretly calls Yoshino to let her know that her mistress is a threat to society, but Yoshino asks him not to worry and to let her handle things from now on. He knows that Aki trusts Yoshino more than anyone, and using it against her would be easy, but he still cannot understand why she is helping him. He then returns to Aki and apologizes for not knowing the dress code for the first date, but he is happy because Aki at least considers this a date. However, Aki claims she is simply being kind to him because Yoshino told her that he stopped eating and cried after failing the test. She also learned that Masamune was in the infirmary all day and that he was very depressed because he could not face failure. Although all of this is false, Aki believes it because it came from Yoshino and wants to spend a day with him to make him feel better. Upon arriving at the cinema, Masamune realizes that Aki rented the entire hall with her father's credit card. Masamune sits next to her, but she says he is too close. But when he sits 3 seats away, she complains that he is too far. In the end, they sit with 1 seat in between and watch the movie where a guy is chased by zombies. After the movie ends, Masamune realizes that Aki is so scared she cannot even feel her legs. So when he asks why she chose a horror movie, she explains that Yoshino arranged the tickets without asking her. Later, they head to the restaurant where Aki eats like a machine, and Masamune realizes she is not as scary as she tries to appear. He remembers that she did not used to eat so much when they were children, and Aki explains that she started only after a tragic incident in her past. Just then, a little girl approaches her and asks why she is dressed like an online girl at a gathering, and Aki explains to her that it is a necessary ritual for the first date. As she goes into elaborate details, Masamune feels embarrassed and takes her out of there. Once outside, he tells her that normal people do not dress like that, making her realize that she has been making a fool of herself all this time. Masamune takes her to a boutique to get a change of clothes, but when he hears Aki crying in the dressing room, he rushes to check on her. However, Aki channels her inner strength and gives him a slap on the face, and Masamune later wakes up on her lap. He remembers meeting her for the first time and recalls that although she was tough and brutal, she was also very kind and gentle with him. When Aki sees that he is already awake, she decides to go home, but Masamune apologizes for scaring her before. While he walks home, Yoshino asks him on the phone why she is helping her and tells him that Aki has behaved very badly lately. So the fact that she has been abandoned might be just the karma cleansing she needs to become aware of her problems. Masamune says that waking up on her lap was a bit risky because he almost started to like her, but he came to his senses the second she opened her mouth. Ending the call, Masamune's sister is surprised that he is talking to someone other than Aki and is glad he is having fun. Masamune throws himself onto his sister's romance novels and spends all night studying them to become the best conqueror. The next day, Aki walks toward the school and scolds Yoshino for making her dress like an idiot on her first date. Masamune observes them from the shadows and has a lot of confidence in his game thanks to the novel. During the remedial class, Masamune sits next to Aki and continues to stare at her throughout the lecture, which makes her nervous. When she asks him why he is not looking at the board, he says he only has eyes for her, and Aki almost requests a restraining order out of pure embarrassment. Later, it begins to rain heavily and Masamune brings Aki an umbrella, saying that he will get wet for love. The young man runs away with confidence after delivering the umbrella, excited to see how Aki would react. Later that night, Yoshino meets with him and reveals that Aki is more scared by his romantic tactics than by the clowns in horror movies. Masamune cannot understand why his tactics do not work, so Yoshino asks him to step back a bit and let time take its course. She advises him to be cold with Aki from now on before walking away like a ruthless villain. Upon returning home, Masamune reads another manga in which the female protagonist falls in love with the male lead after he treats her with indifference. However, he is worried that Aki might start to hate him if he adopts this approach. The next day, he encounters Aki in the hallway and pulls back following Yoshino's advice. Aki does not notice this and returns the umbrella to him, but she is surprised when Masamune passes by her without saying a word. Entering his class, Masamune breathes deeply, knowing that what he did is super risky and that it could ruin everything he has built so far. Later, he meets Aki in in the remedial class, but continues to ignore her much to her surprise. That day, he leaves without saying a word, but when he meets Aki the next day, he expects her to beg for his attention. However, when Aki treats him with coldness, Yoshino stares at him to stop him from pursuing her. Masamune struggles hard to ignore her throughout the day, which takes a toll on his stomach. When he returns from the bathroom, Aki finds him in the hallway and severely declares that they need to talk. He expected her to be all soft, but since she is in her brutal mode, he decides to run out of there. However, Aki hits him on the head with the umbrella to try to stop him, but when that does not work, she grabs him by the collar and pins him against the wall. While Aki is busy insulting him, Masamune believes his fantasy has been shattered. At that moment, Aki softly asks him why he is ignoring her, and he looks up to see that her eyes are full of tears, making him realize that his plan actually worked. Masamune feels attracted to her at that moment, but restrains himself and says he did it on purpose to get her attention. Aki says he is a horrible person for doing that, but although her words are harsh, her body language suggests she wants Masamune. Masamune says he wanted to get her attention because he likes her, which causes Aki to ask what he likes about her. Despite some very obvious reasons, Masamune plays dumb because he needs to consult Yoshino before he can answer this question. Later, he meets with Yoshino, who thinks he is more of an idiot than she believed for not having thought it through. He begs Yoshino to help him out of this situation, and she suggests writing a letter to Aki. The next day, Masamune meets with Aki and hands her the letter, but she throws it in the trash and says she despises him. After she runs out, Yoshino appears on the scene and Masamune explains the situation. He gets impatient and asks if he should do something, and Yoshino tells him sternly to stay quiet and let her handle everything. However, Masamune reminds himself that he is the main character and refuses to sit idly by. Meanwhile, Aki heads to a park to take some time alone, but she worries that she might get in trouble for missing classes. Feeling irritated, she remembers how she followed Masamune to the park where she saw him asking Yoshino for advice. She feels frustrated knowing that Masamune could not find an answer on his own, and feels betrayed because Yoshino met with him behind her back. While she throws her umbrella, Yoshino appears in the park and tells her that she met with Masamune yesterday. Despite having a face full of resentment, Aki acts with indifference, stating that she does not care at all who Yoshino becomes friends with. Yoshino holds her face gently to show affection and asks if she is upset about Masamune, but Aki says she will never cry for a man because they are manipulative liars. Yoshino realizes her acting and tells her that Masamune actually likes her, and she knows that Aki likes him too. Having said that, Yoshino disappears from the scene, leaving Aki reflecting on her feelings. While Aki returns home, she remembers that tragic incident from her past, after which she became cold toward boys. While she thought about Masamune's great presence, she almost crosses the street with a red light, but is saved from a fatal crash when Masamune stops her. When Masamune scolds her for being reckless, she says it has nothing to do with him, but the boy responds saying that he will not do without her. Feeling that she might like him, Aki leans in to kiss him, but the moment is ruined when the car driver runs in to check if they are okay. She thanks God for having brought her here, and suddenly an unknown girl leans toward Masamune and explains that she has been wishing to see him. Masamune does not even know who this young woman is, but Aki is surprised thinking that she has just been hit with the plot twist of the century. After pressing her large physical charms against Masamune, the girl grabs his hands and says that fate must have arranged this moment because she has been thinking about him day and night. She asks him if he has also been thinking about her, and Masamune, totally unaware of who she is, declares that this is another episode of Trouble with Pretty Girls. Just then, the girl's driver, Shido, reminds her that they are running late, so she promises to see him again before leaving. After she leaves, Aki angrily asks Masamune who that girl is, but he really has no idea. However, Aki believes he is lying and leaves. Meanwhile, Shido reminds the girl that she is a member of the Fujinomiya family, and the girl says that this will be an interesting game. The next day at school, Masamune enters the rush of the dining hall and buys food for Aki to let her know he is innocent. He believes Aki will listen to him if she is full, but before he can reach her, Yoshino attacks him with a fully loaded toy gun. When he reminds her that this is not a battlefield, Yoshino reveals that Aki has assigned her the mission of keeping him away every time he tries to approach her. She says that Aki was really upset and asks what he did, so Masamune continues explaining everything that happened. He swears he does not know who that girl is, but Yoshino says that is not the real problem before running away. Masamune decides to face Aki alone, but then changes his mind and leaves the food at the door. After failing to sleep that night, Masamune is in class worrying about who that girl is. Although she is cute and exactly his type, he still needs to get revenge on Aki before settling into a real relationship. Just then, the teacher introduces a new transfer student to the class, who turns out to be the same girl he met yesterday. The girl introduces herself as Neko Fujinomiya, and the whole class is amazed by how cute she looks. After class ends, Futaba Tai and the others surround Neko to become friends with her, making it impossible for Masamune to approach. The same thing happens after the next class, and even during the break, the boys send Kojuro so he can integrate with them. However, Masamune decides that enough is enough and approaches Neko on his own. Just then, Futaba tells him that Neko only transferred here because she she feels indebted to him for something he did in the past. After the girls insist that she tell them the story, Neko takes them 3 years back to Christmas when she was collecting donations. She felt sad because no one was paying attention to her, but Masamune appeared out of nowhere, gave her his jacket, and left after donating some money. Masamune remembers that he was a ball of fat 3 years ago, which means there is no way he was the same boy she met that day. The young man then takes her hand and leads her outside, but Neko strangely collapses on her knees and he notices blood coming from her mouth. Masamune panics and helps her up, only to discover that she used ketchup to scare him. Despite being upset, Masamune asks her why she lied about him, so Neko makes him promise not to tell the truth to anyone else. She says kindly that she has always admired him, and Masamune barely holds back from falling for her because he still has a mission to fulfill. With a heavy heart, he tells her that he likes someone else, which makes Neko cry. When she asks him if he is already dating someone, Masamune says it is unilateral, which leads her to ask who this girl is. While Aki instructs Yoshino on what to bring her for lunch, Masamune takes Neko to his class and shows her who he is pursuing. He assumes Neko will give up since Aki is a complete package, but Neko approaches her casually and apologizes for the other day. After introducing herself, Neko says she envies Aki for having Masamune's affection, but he decides to intervene before this turns into a war zone. Just then, when a student opens the window, the air lifts Neko's skirt, revealing that she is in commando mode and without underwear. Neko realizes that Masamune saw her and walks back to charm him with her attributes, but Aki gets frustrated and leaves the class. Masamune pursues her until explaining that everything is a big misunderstanding, but Aki accidentally hits a teacher while trying to stop him. The teacher punishes them with the task of cleaning the pool, and Aki tells Masamune to stay 3 meters away from her or she will file a restraining order. Masamune gets frustrated and sprays her with the hose, forcing her to put on her swimsuit. It was then that he realized that Aki might not have large physical features, but those attributes and those thighs are, without a doubt, a 5-star meal. At that moment, Aki carries a bucket of water and asks Masamune to come closer so she can throw it on him. When he says he is not wearing a swimsuit and that his underwear would get wet, she mocks him, saying that he and Neko can go in commando mode together. When Aki trips in the pool, Masamune realizes that she does not know how to swim and jumps in to rescue her. Before he can reach her, Aki stands up and grabs the ladder, leaving him wet for no reason. When she asks him why he jumped in to save her, Masamune says angrily that it is because he likes her, but it does not matter because she does not believe him. Aki decides to give him a chance to prove himself, and when he asks her what he needs to do to earn her trust, she says he has to kiss her. Meanwhile, Yoshino is waiting for Aki when Neko approaches her with an umbrella and comments on the hot weather. Neko then asks for Masamune's whereabouts, but she says she has no idea. Back in the pool, Masamune's brain begins to process every simulation of how to kiss Aki until it gives him a blue screen and he stays there standing, doing nothing. In his mind, he expected Aki to want to kiss him after proposing to her, for it was then that he planned to leave her. Given the circumstances, he decides to go ahead and pulls her closer. However, when he tries to kiss her, Aki fails and hits him with a surprise combo, leaving the man very upset. Before she can explain herself, Futabatai and other students arrive at the pool, and Masamune dodges a bullet by explaining that he and Aki have the task of cleaning the pool. After leaving, Aki quietly exits the pool, believing that Masamune is dying to taste her forbidden fruit, but also says it means nothing to her. Later, Masamune is frustrated because he cannot understand why Aki would hit him after asking him for a kiss. Just then, Neko appears and sits next to him, but Masamune looks in another direction because he remembers that she goes without underwear. Then, Neko serves him a cup of hot tea and explains how important it is to stay warm even in summer. She explains the importance of health supplements, but Masamune says he prefers exercise and a proper diet. Then he asks Neko what she likes about him, remembering how Aki asked him the same question and dismissed all his generic answers. He believes Neko will not have an honest answer, which will allow him to reject her, but Neko says she likes the fact that he does not even see his own charms. Masamune freezes because he did not expect such a sweet answer, and before leaving, Neko advises him to have more self-confidence. Later, Yoshino realizes that Neko is a dangerous person and begins to follow her to see what she is really doing. After chasing her for a while, Yoshino loses her in an alley, and the driver Shido appears right behind her and asks if she needs something from Neko. Neko then reappears and kindly asks her to stop acting so clueless, as she knows that Shido and Yoshino actually serve Aki. Yoshino stops acting and asks why she is after Masamune, and Neko says it is because he saved her in the past. However, Yoshino says that is nonsense because Masamune already told her that he did not know Neko. Later, Masamune walks back home and writes Neko's response in his diary, planning to use it with Aki the next time she asks him the same question. Once he enters his house, he sees his mother teaching Yoshino and Neko how to cook. Unable to understand, he drags Yoshino upstairs and asks her what they are doing in his house. She explains how his mother met them on her way back and recognized their uniforms, assuming they were admirers of Masamune, and dragged them so they could cook together for him. Masamune apologizes for his mother's behavior and asks Yoshino to help him hide all traces of his past, but Yoshino points points to the gym equipment in his room that speaks for itself. When Neko enters his room, he immediately tries to get her out, but Neko says she came to tell him that the food is ready. While they head downstairs, Chinatsu is about to call the police because her brother being intimate with a woman feels like a crime against nature. When Neko says he is quite popular among girls, Kinue is about to tell her that Masamune used to be a very fat boy, but he stops her before she says too much. While they begin to eat, Masamune removes the high-calorie coating from the shrimp, and Neko takes many pills and takes them as food. While Kinue is upset, Chinatsu begins to laugh, thinking that Masamune and Neko are very similar in what they eat. She also suggests playing with fireworks after dinner, and Neko quickly joins the idea. At night, all the girls dress in yukatas to play with fireworks, but Yoshino is more concerned because Aki thought it would be fun to test how many fireworks it would take to put her into orbit. Later, Kinue brings watermelons and Chinatsu challenges Neko to a match to see who can spit the seeds furthest. Seeing Neko laugh, Masamune realizes that he really would have fallen for her if she had not been lying to him all this time. Later that night, Shido comes to pick up Neko, who thanks Masamune for the good time before leaving. Afterward, Yoshino decides to walk toward the main road, and once they get there, she asks Masamune not to fall into Neko's trap. Back home, Chinatsu is glad that her brother has gone from being a certified loner to talking to people, and Kinue says she did not expect to see Neko there. Meanwhile, Shido asks Neko if she had any problems, and Neko says she made some progress while holding a photo of Masamune and Aki as children. At school, Masamune uses Neko's line on Aki, telling her that she is so modest that she does not even realize her own charms. Aki says those cheap lines will not work on her because she knows what she is worth, although in Masamune's case, it is not that he is modest, but that he is too much of an idiot to realize his charm. With the summer holidays just around the corner, Masamune plans to take advantage of them to get closer to Aki. However, she bursts into his classroom and tells him she will spend all her time in her island villa. She invites Kojuro to bother Masamune, but the boy surprises her by declaring that he will only come if Masamune joins. Just then, Neko clings to Masamune, insisting that she wants to join too, and Futabatai quickly signs up. Aki is told she has to take them all or spend the holidays alone, so Aki chooses the former, despite being clearly upset. While the six are on their way to Tsunade Island, Yoshino tells Masamune that she still cannot understand why Neko is pursuing him. Masamune tells her not to worry, since his goal is to humiliate Aki, and nothing will distract him from that. However, Yoshino severely asks him to be careful with Neko on this trip, or she will tell Aki everything about his plan. Meanwhile, the secretary of the Adagaki family, Yui Tanabe, has been abandoned by her boyfriend and begins to throw tantrums all over the place. When a maid informs her that Aki and her friends have arrived, she immediately returns to being calm and composed. Meanwhile, the team is amazed because they had never seen such a luxury villa before. While they wait outside, Yui appears dressed provocatively and asks the maids to open the main door. After greeting Aki cheerfully, she looks at her friends and is surprised to see that she brought a male friend despite being the leader of hatred toward them. While Aki wonders what to say, Masamune decides to intervene and introduces himself as Aki's boyfriend. However, Aki was not ready for this move and throws the briefcase in his face, which triggers an argument between the two. Meanwhile, Yui assumes that Aki now likes men and welcomes this change, saying that it would have been embarrassing if she still hated them. She begins to ramble about how Aki has a cute boyfriend and how happy she is that Aki has finally overcome her hatred, unaware that Aki still does not have much affection for them. When she asks why, Aki never told her about Masamune. Aki says severely that she did not consider it necessary and takes her away. However, while they leave, Yui secretly wishes for Masamune to disappear. Inside the villa, Aki's fist is trembling, but she swallows her rage because destroying his face would ruin her image. Masamune congratulates himself for having correctly read the situation and feels relieved that Yui has not been harsh about it, as Aki has an image to maintain. She asks Masamune to keep acting like her boyfriend on the island, but if he tries anything funny, she will call the police. Later, Masamune arrives at the beach and decides to show off his body, but to his disappointment, the only person who cares is Kojuro. Just then, Neko appears with her charms on display and offers to apply sunscreen to Masamune, which makes him panic because he is Aki's pretend boyfriend at this moment. Aki separates them and tells Neko to find someone else because she and Masamune are dating now. Aki explains that if Yui sees them, she will think Masamune is an indecisive womanizer, and given that Neko is the one being manipulated, it will not look good for the Fujinomiya family. She then takes Masamune's hand and drags him to a private part of the beach, unaware that Yui is there watching them with binoculars. While the two are alone, Aki orders him to bring her some food, which bothers him. When he reminds her what they did, she says no one is watching them and there is no need for her to be kind to him. Masamune encounters Yui, who packs him some food, and the two begin to talk about Aki. Then he asks her about some fun places on the island for high school students, and Yui suggests a place for a test of courage. Masamune remembers Aki wetting her pants during a horror movie, so he sees this as the perfect opportunity to rescue her and win her heart. After leaving, Yui states that he is free to love whoever he wants, but that he is 100 years too young to win Aki Aki's love, and she plans to send him to hell. After beginning her work as secretary of the Adagaki family, Yui one day saw Aki crying and asked her where the fat boy she used to play with was. Aki simply responded that he was gone and that she did not need him before running away. From that moment, Yui began to admire her for choosing pride over vulnerability and rejecting all the boys who approached her. However, now that Masamune has appeared, he is ruining the implacable boss Aki, whom she admires so much. Masamune takes everyone to the place Yui suggested, which turns out to be an abandoned house. To decide the order of entry, lots are drawn, and the line ends up being Yoshino, Kojuro, Futaba, Aki, Masamune, and Neko. When Yoshino enters first, Masamune feels accomplished because he rigged the draw so Aki would enter first and freeze with fear, giving him the opportunity to burst in and rescue her. He expects Aki to break her boss attitude and beg him to be her boyfriend forever so he can finally leave her. Inside the house, Yui waits with a mask, planning to scare Masamune, so Aki sees him as weak and abandons him. However, instead of Masamune or Aki, Yoshino appears as a low-budget horror villain and chases a terrified Yui through the house. Panicking, Yui runs straight toward Aki, who finally manages to turn on her flashlight. The sudden beam of light shines on Aki's face, startling them both and making them scream. Hearing the chaos, Masamune enters the house and wonders who the masked person is, but Yui runs out after seeing Yoshino once more. In her flight, she runs into Neko, who casually spills fake blood, which makes her run and crash into a lamppost. Upon regaining consciousness, she realizes that Masamune is carrying her on his back, and the boy asks her to stay still because she hit her head. Masamune reveals that he asked Yoshino to scare the others for fun, but had no idea that Yui was also planning the same. Masamune reveals that he and Aki are not really dating and admits that he created the test of courage because he wanted to show off to her, but in the process, he unintentionally dragged Yui into it, so he apologizes sincerely. Seeing his honesty, Yui realizes that Masamune is a good boy and that her jealousy might have been excessive. She asks Yui to keep their conversation secret, and she agrees to do so. On their way back from the island, Yoshino praises Masamune's plan to conquer Aki, and although it did not work as expected, she decides to hide the truth from Aki. A few days later, Masamune is in his room exercising when he suddenly receives a call from Aki. After taking his time to prepare for the worst, he answers and gets yelled at. Later, he meets with Yoshino and tells him that he accidentally left a bag on the island, and Aki wants to return it to him personally. Masamune is confident that his plan is working, but Yoshino asks him to proceed with caution because one mistake can ruin his entire plan from now on. Later that night, Masamune opens his drawer and realizes that his old photo with Aki is missing, which sends him into a panic. Aki arrives at the cafe the next day with a bag in hand and makes sure to remind him how stupid he is in case he had forgotten it too. She says she wanted to deliver it to his house, but Yui insisted that they meet in person for it. While Aki talks about Futaba inviting them to the pool, Masamune cannot get the stolen image out of his mind and wonders if Neko is the one who stole it. Once Aki realizes that Masamune is not paying attention to her, she gets angry and leaves the cafe. While Masamune sits there alone, regretting letting himself get carried away, he receives a call from Neko that surprises him. Neko wants to know if he is coming to the pool with Futaba and the rest, but Masamune wants to ask about the image and asks her to meet in person. Upon entering Neko's apartment, he realizes that it is the first time he has been in a girl's place, and he is stuck there like a failed background character. However, he wants to know if she stole that photo from his room, so this is the risk he is willing to take. While Neko prepares the tea, she asks him about the purpose of this visit, but Masamune clearly did not think it through. He says he was just in the area, and Neko acts very happy, claiming that fate brought them together again. She then excuses herself to go to the bathroom, but takes this opportunity to snoop around the place in search of the stolen photo. Upon entering her room, he trips over a jar of vitamins and leaves it on the table. While he looks around, he sees that the room was full of hundreds of romance novels and decides to read one. Just then, Neko appears behind him and tells him that the tea is ready. Noticing the novel in his hand, she explains that she saw the same novel in Masamune's room, so she asked Shido to get her all 3 volumes. Since she admitted to having snuck into his room, Masamune asks her if she took a photo from his drawer, and Neko admits that she did. She then takes the image from between her attributes and says she could not help it because it was too cute. Masamune believes she refers to Aki in the image, but Neko leans toward him and tells him she is talking about him, which makes the boy blush. Masamune says he was a chubby boy back then, but Neko grabs his hand and says there is no problem. Masamune gets lost in the moment and freezes, only to realize that Neko is actually kissing him. After coming to his senses, he worries that Shido will catch them, but Neko says he will be out all day. While she pins him down, Masamune begins to think about his tragic childhood when he was bullied by his classmates. She explains how in reality no one liked him, and the only people who approached him were those who wanted his money. He knows that Neko is not going after his money, but he also knows that she actually does not like him. He still does not understand what she is looking for, but tells her that he does not want to sleep with just anyone who does not take it seriously. Masamune takes the photo and is about to leave when Neko asks him if he really likes Aki. The man tells tells her that it is his revenge before leaving the building, leaving Neko alone with tears in her eyes and frustrated. Later, he meets with Futaba and the rest, and they observe that he looks quite somber, which is uncharacteristic of him. Kojuro suggests they wait for Neko, and Masamune realizes that this would be a quite awkward encounter given how he left her. Just then, Futaba reveals that Neko canceled because she is sick, and Masamune feels bad knowing it is his fault. Everyone tries to have fun, but Yoshino realizes that both Aki and Masamune are distracted. Upon leaving the pool, Shido approaches Masamune and demands to know what he did to Neko, revealing that she is missing and has not taken her seizure medication. Masamune is stunned to learn that Neko is sick, and Shido is surprised that he did not notice it given that she is a walking pharmacy. Masamune begins to wonder why Neko hid her condition and assumes it is because she wanted to keep her image strong. Shido knows that Masamune visited Neko's apartment the previous day and insists that he tell him the truth, so he explains that he left her abandoned and crying because he wants to conquer Aki. Aki completely ignores what Masamune said and suggests they look for her using GPS, but Shido says Neko left her phone at home. With everyone on board, Aki asks Shido to drive them near her apartment so they can split up and search for her. Everyone else sits in the car, but Masamune stays behind as he knows where Neko is located. Yoshino asks him why he went to Neko's apartment, and he responds that it is because she told him to hurry. However, Yoshino says this is not what she meant before leaving him alone. Later, everyone looks for Neko near her apartment, but they fail to find her, so Masamune decides to look for her at the school as a last resort. When Aki appears there, Masamune believes he is seeing a ghost, but then looks at her non-existent attributes, which confirms she is the real Aki. Aki says she came to look for Neko and realizes that they both share the same idea, but they need to exchange ideas since she is not here. Masamune asks Aki why she is leading this search mission, even though she does not like Neko, and Aki says it is because she feels bad for her. She claims to understand what it feels like to be in a unilateral relationship, but Masamune is surprised because he cannot understand why she, being the expert in rejections, understands the pain they feel. Masamune has had enough and asks Aki if she remembers someone called Pig's Foot, but before she can respond, a paper airplane suddenly hits him on the head. Looking up, they notice more paper airplanes descending from the school roof. Realizing what was happening, Masamune quickly runs toward the roof. Remembering that Neko had been reading a manga where the heroine, after being rejected by her beloved, climbs to the roof and turns her love letters into paper airplanes. Masamune reaches the roof and finds Neko waiting for him, but when he approaches her, she collapses because she did not take her medications. When Aki reaches the roof, he sends her to call Shido and wonders why Neko would risk her life just to catch his attention. Later, everyone waits anxiously in the hospital when Shido comes out and, to their relief, tells them that Neko is fine. Then he asks Aki to join them because Neko wants to talk to her. Meanwhile, Masamune feels depressed because he knows his heart was tilted toward Neko until his tragic childhood prevented him from moving forward. While he worries about his options, Aki approaches him and tells him that Neko wants to talk to him. When he enters the room, she looks at him with loving eyes and says they need to talk about their past. She speaks of a time when a group of girls congratulated Neko for her impressive speech before the student council. A girl then invited Neko to her family villa to celebrate her birthday, and Neko happily accepted. When the girls suggested playing tennis during the trip, another girl quickly scolded her, reminding her that Neko was too fragile for such activities. Later, her grandfather told her that she needed surgery abroad or her condition would only worsen. Neko agreed to try it, but asked him to wait because she wanted to experience what it is like to fall in love first. Masamune asks her why she chose him, and Neko says it is because he won the random Eeny Meeny Miny Mo tournament. She mentions that they are similar because they both hide the truth with many lies, but she regrets nothing and will leave with many good memories. Meanwhile, the rest are in the hallway when Futaba says she likes Masamune. Well, she sometimes regrets having kept her feelings to herself, but she also believes it is better this way because she gets to spend time with them. Then she wonders what Aki feels for Masamune, and although she looks like a girl who received socks for Christmas, Yoshino can see that a part of Aki is slowly falling in love with him. At that moment, Masamune appears, and when Aki tries to talk to him, he passes by her as if she were a background character with a boring side mission. Later, Shido asks Neko if she is okay with letting Masamune go, and she says it is fine because he made him remember something. Neko then looks at an old photo of her and Masamune at a wedding where their families met for the first time. While Masamune walks home, he reflects on how Neko's deceitful nature made her unreliable and wonders if the same will happen to Yaki. Although he still plans to give Aki the worst possible breakup, he slowly begins to doubt his approach. At night, Aki reflects on her conversation with Neko, who told her to stop acting like a boss when she was far from crying. In the bathroom, Neko asked her why she had to reject Masamune's love and thought that now her soul burns. She wonders if she really loves Masamune and remembers his old chubby self, concluding that she was really in love with him back then. Meanwhile, Kinue begins to cry, thinking that Masamune is running away from the house, but Chinatsu guesses that he is only going to train. Masamune says he is going to train to become a better conqueror so he can choose girls literally and and figuratively. On the other hand, a boy approaches Aki and asks her to guess who he is. While she looks closely, she realizes his resemblance to the Masamune she once knew, and before she can react, he smiles and tells her with confidence that he is back. Masamune's double wants to see the head of the family and gives a letter from his grandfather to the butler. The letter says that Aki's grandfather promised his grandfather that their grandchildren would marry, which means he and Aki are supposed to marry. The boy introduces himself as Kanetsugu Gasu, and Yoshino quickly calls Masamune to inform him of the situation. However, Masamune does not answer the call because he is busy with his American Psycho-style routine, and after doing 500 push-ups, he believes he can lift whoever he wants. After the summer holidays, Aki walks toward the school when a boy proposes to her, but she grabs a marker and writes something R-rated on his shirt. Her followers, Sonoka Kaneko and Kikune Kiba, tell her that the guy is the ace of the baseball team, but Aki says she is not interested in muscular guys. While they celebrate that Aki rejected another boy, she tells them to calm down, as this happens every day. Just then, another friend appears claiming that Aki now spends more time with Masamune than with her friends. She sees Futaba's Instagram and realizes that Aki and Masamune even spent the summer holidays together at a private beach. Aki tries to explain that she only wanted to invite Kojuro, but Mari Mizuno reminds her that although Kojuro is a walking beauty trap, he is also a biological man. Just then, Kanetsugu arrives wanting to see Aki, and the girls prepare for another resounding rejection. However, Aki says she will consider it, which shocks them. While they walk together, the girls cannot comprehend Aki accepting the advances of a man, and Mari assumes that Aki likes people with a build similar to the Michelin Man. Meanwhile, Masamune enters his class with confidence, but is surprised to see that Neko is still attending. She explains that the surgery was a success, and she was discharged after a month of being hospitalized. Then she asks him if he managed to get into Aki's pants in the meantime, but the guy says he was training throughout the month. Neko understands that he has not progressed, but Masamune says they simply beat him because of what he told her in the hospital. Just then, Neko tells him that Aki walks with another boy, but Masamune thinks that a snack factory cannot compete with his fat-burning machine. After class, Masamune enters Aki's class with confidence with a gift, expecting his new and more muscular body to cause a stir. However, he is surprised to see her conversing with the chubby guy he saw before and asks who he is. Kanetsugu introduces himself as a new transfer student, and they learn that his nickname is Masamune. Then he asks Aki not to address him as Masamune here, because it is going to cause confusion. Masamune asks if he is a relative of Aki, but when Kanetsugu says he is her fiancé, the guy gets shocked and runs away. He encounters Yoshino in the equipment room and asks her why she never told him, but Yoshino says she called him many times and got no answer. Yoshino says that although she is surprised, the letter Kanetsugu brought was real, which is why he stays as a guest. Masamune believes Aki will not take it lightly since she hates boys, but Yoshino says she has been acting strangely and that she might be in love. Later, Masamune begins to observe Kanetsugu and realizes that he is good at soccer despite having a child's build. In addition, he has good grades and helps people study, and his cheerful attitude even helps him make friends with the ladies. Later, Masamune meets with Yoshino in the park and expresses his frustration about the whole situation. He cannot understand why Aki would reject him when he was fat, but then replaces one fat guy with another. Not even Yoshino understands what is happening and apologizes to Masamune for letting him down. Meanwhile, Aki's fan club meets and discusses the recent changes in their idol. While they lament the contamination of Aki, Kanetsugu appears and asks if he can sit with them. Kikune cannot believe the nerve of this man for not only taking Aki away but also wanting to become friends with them. Before they can hit him with a bamboo stick, Kanetsugu explains that everything is a misunderstanding and that there is something he needs to tell them. For the next festival, Futabate suggests that her class project should have Kojuro as Snow White and Masamune as the prince. And although neither of them likes the idea, the class excitement gets out of hand, and Masamune feels that they have already lost the argument. Masamune does not care about losing in class because his mind is focused solely on getting Kanetsugu out of the scene. Later, Masamune realizes that Aki is alone and takes her aside to talk, but she distracts him by telling him that his zipper is open. While he checks and realizes it is fine, Aki takes the opportunity to sneak away. While Masamune worries about being tricked by a fat guy, Aki's fan club observes from a distance and decides to protect Aki and Kanetsugu from this fierce beast. Earlier, he told the girls that although he is engaged to Aki, he has no intention of marrying her. He believes Aki is a beautiful goddess, and he, a walking diabetic machine, should not have the right to touch her. The girls realize that Aki would never lose her innocence with Kanetsugu, but if she ended up with Masamune, that maniac would make her suffer for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, student council member Sonoka Kaneko realizes that both Class 2A and Class 2B have submitted an application to perform Snow White. Another member suggests they approve 2B since they proposed it first, but Sonoka states they will approve 2A later. Futaba is informed that her application is rejected, but she refuses to accept it because she sent the proposal first. She decides to confront Mari to make her change her mind, but she refuses, saying that they have already chosen Aki and Kanetsugu for the roles. At that moment, Aki appears and says they should give up because Snow White with only men would be a disaster. Futaba argues that Snow White with a fat prince also makes no sense, but Aki says that the dad bod is simply the pose of a rich man. At that moment, Kanetsugu arrives and asks Aki to be considerate toward Futaba, which frustrates Masamune. The guy then suggests voting by popular vote, and both parties agree with the idea. Masamune proposes another competition to Kanetsugu, stating that whoever wins will win the right to dance with Aki at the post-festival party. The next day, Futaba Tai assumes the role of director of the upcoming Snow White play, but treats everyone harshly due to the competition. Kojuro says he is doing his best, but Futaba tells him sternly that it is still not enough, causing the boy to run out crying. While he worries about how terrifying girls are, he almost crashes into Neko in the hallway, and after talking with her for a while, he realizes that she is not scary like the others. Meanwhile, Masamune is looking for Kojuro when he encounters Kanetsugu, who says things about Aki on purpose to make him jealous. He also mocks Masamune for pinning Aki against the wall, explaining that it only looks good in novels, but in reality makes him look like an idiot. After leaving, Masamune is even more determined to dance with Aki and begins to write tips in his diary. Meanwhile, Aki's fan club looks forward to the popular vote, and Mari has a plan to make Masamune lose. While heading home, Kanetsugu states that he met Masamune today, but talking about this makes Aki more dry than the Sahara. Kanetsugu apologizes for having mentioned it, and Aki praises him for always being so kind to her. At that moment, they pass a food stall, and Aki decides to buy something, while Kanetsugu stays behind to reflect on his true intentions. He explains how his family was quite poor, and his #1 priority was earning a decent living. One day, he met Yui Tanabe, who mistook him for the young Masamune with whom Aki used to play, and that event allowed him to get closer to Aki. At home, while Masamune is training, he suddenly sneezes, which leads Chinatsu to call Kinue and tell her that Masamune has caught a cold. Kinue comes running in crying and wraps him tightly in blankets, hoping he does not die. The next day, the festival officially begins, and the students are excited about the double game of Snow White between Class A and B. Meanwhile, Masamune feels sick because he went to the roof with bare skin to prove to his mother that he is completely fine. At that moment, Neko grabs him by the arm and takes him to the infirmary, explaining that she was able to notice instantly that he had a fever. She tucks him into bed and asks him to sleep until he feels better. She also tells him not to worry about the play because she will happily be his dance partner if he loses to Kanetsugu. Neko then goes to buy him something hot to drink while he rests, unaware that Kikuni is watching from the corner. Meanwhile, Kanetsugu is looking for a place to change and accidentally enters the women's locker room. After being kicked out, he meets the student who plays the old witch, who takes him to a place where he can put on the costume. Kojuro has the mission to unlock his alpha mode, so Futaba stops insulting him when he encounters Neko buying a drink for Masamune. They decide to visit him together, but are surprised to discover that he is no longer in his bed. They ask Futaba if she has seen Masamune, but she has no idea, which worries them. Meanwhile, Masamune wakes up in a different room wrapped in a blanket, and Kikune appears explaining that it was she who put him there. Neko and Futaba have no luck finding Masamune, but Kojuro feels that something is wrong because he keeps running into Class A students everywhere he goes. Back in the room, Kikune receives a call from Mari telling her to keep Masamune under control until Aki and Kanetsugu finish dancing. When Mari returns to the dressing room, she sees Yoshino telling Aki that Kanetsugu is nowhere to be found. While they disperse to find him, Mari feels frustrated knowing that Class B has the same plan as them. It turns out that Yoshino disguised herself as the old witch and locked Kanetsugu in the equipment room. She calls Masamune to tell him about it, but when he does not answer, she realizes that he might also be locked somewhere. Meanwhile, Kikuni warns Masamune to stay away from Aki, revealing that she and Mari are Aki's personal guards. She relates how no one could beat her in the dojo except a boy named Masaru, who often resorted to cheating. After one of his victories, he confessed to Aki, but she immediately rejected him, which left Kikune impressed when Aki defeated this cheat without even lifting a finger. Masamune comments that Kikune might have adopted Masaru's cheating tendencies since she has tied him up. Realizing the truth in his words, Kikune feels insecure and finally decides to untie him. Just then, Mari calls and asks Masamune to let it be a draw and exchange hostages. Confused at first, Masamune quickly deduces that Yoshino must have kidnapped Kanetsugu. Since their performance is scheduled after Class A, Masamune sits and waits for his classmates to rescue him. Meanwhile, Aki decides to act without Kanetsugu, so Mari sends a text message to Kikune to let Masamune go and look for Kanetsugu instead. Realizing that the other class probably did the same, Kikune gets enraged and attacks him. Masamune tries to escape through the window, but hesitates when he sees it is the 3rd floor and ends up hanging awkwardly from a ledge. Kikune pounces on him but loses her balance and ends up falling into the fountain below. Futaba and Kojuro stumble upon the scene and help Masamune back inside, who explains with confidence that Class A will have to withdraw since Kanetsugu has disappeared. When Kojuro informs him that Class A's play has already begun, Futaba wonders if they plan to act without a prince. Masamune quickly quickly runs toward the stage, bewildered and determined to find out what Aki is thinking. When Masamune reaches the hall, he sees Aki as Snow White and asks Mari if they have found Kanetsugu, but she explains they have not. Earlier, Aki had addressed the cast, acknowledging Kanetsugu's absence but urging everyone to act as planned, hoping they would find him in time. Determined to resolve the situation, Masamune decides they need to free Kanetsugu, but first he must find Yoshino. He notices her among the cast on stage and struggles to figure out how to approach her. Thinking quickly, Masamune goes backstage despite his fever and tells Mari to listen to him if she wants the play to succeed. The play reaches the scene where Snow White is presumed dead and placed in a coffin. Aki assumes they did not manage to find Kanetsugu and prepares to end the performance there. She remembers how she once waited for days for a young Masamune who never appeared, convincing herself that a man should never be trusted. Just then, Masamune intervenes on stage as the prince for her show. When Futaba and Kojuro reach the scene, Masamune begins to sweat due to his fever but keeps going. Earlier, Masamune convinced Mari to let him take Kanetsugu's role and finish the play because he did not want her hard work to be in vain. While performing his role, Masamune trips and falls, but skillfully covers it up as exhaustion from the prince's long journey. Mari suspects he might be sabotaging the play, but Kikune appears and points out that he has a fever. Despite his condition, Masamune pushes forward and, with a small push from Yoshino, manages to approach Aki for the final kiss. While everyone expects a fake kiss, Masamune surprises them by lifting Aki's head and kissing her for real. Aki instinctively channels her inner fury, and Yoshino quickly declares that Snow White has awakened, indicating the end of the play. The audience bursts into applause and Kanetsugu returns to the hall, but the moment has already passed. Later, during a karaoke meeting, Sonoka announces that Class A has won the competition by popular vote and Masamune and Aki are awarded Best Hero and Best Heroine respectively. Futaba argues that it is unfair, pointing out that Class A only managed to complete their play thanks to Masamune, who went directly to the infirmary afterward, forcing Class B to cancel completely. Noticing the full room, Aki questions the unexpected number of people and the two groups explain that both planned after-parties, but since all other rooms were full, they ended up sharing the same space. Sonoka proposes to settle their differences with a singing contest, and Futaba eagerly accepts, increasing the stakes by declaring that the losers will pay the bill. Futaba goes first and scores 83 points, which are quickly eclipsed by Aki, who scores 89. After taking turns, it is Neko's turn to sing, who chooses a song that perfectly reflects her heartbreak over having been rejected by Masamune. Meanwhile, Sonoka realizes that Masamune is not used to going to karaoke and plans to use it against him so Aki can see how stupid he is. When it is Yoshino's turn, Masamune leaves the room to go to the bathroom, but upon leaving, Sonoka and Kikune corner him. However, Aki appears and tells them not to pressure Masamune, or he might get scared. After they retreat, Masamune assumes that she left the room only to support him, but in reality she only wanted to eat something. Once they return, Aki hears her favorite song and realizes that Neko was the one who put it on. Seeing her frustration, Neko asks her to sing with her. After both conquer the room with their performance, everyone forgets their differences and starts enjoying themselves as a team. Next is Masamune's turn, and he chooses a song called Elementary World. Upon finishing the song, everyone collapses because somehow his voice is even worse than that of any amateur. Later, he sits on a bench with Aki and is happy because he burned many calories while singing. Aki's ears are already burned by his horrible voice, so when she asks why he does not leave, he says he wants to wait for Yoshino to return because it is not safe for a woman to be alone at these hours. Seeing her ungrateful behavior, Masamune says jokingly that she did not even thank him for saving her play. However, when Aki asks him what she needs to do to pay him back, Masamune hesitantly asks her to kiss him. She agrees and asks him to close his eyes, and while Masamune's heart does somersaults of excitement, she puts an ice cream in his mouth. When he opens his eyes, he sees that Yoshino has returned, and Aki says he should thank her for sharing her precious food. After she leaves, Yoshino calls him an idiot for not following through, explaining that leaving Aki alone instead of begging for a kiss would have been the perfect revenge, leaving Masamune frustrated.